Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. In this edition, Mexico City, one of the biggest cities in the world, but a city with problems. Pollution, water shortages, daily issues for people there. Drug cartels too wield a large swathe of bad influence. Mexico City's mayor has a tough job. Well, Laurence Cuvillier is our reporter. She tells us more now on why she wanted to meet and shadow Mexico City's first female mayor. Laurence, over to you.
Well, what first caught my attention with Claudia Sheinbaum is that she's a scientist. She's a discreet, hard-working physicist who doesn't use the classical language of a politician who wants to seduce the masses. She's actually very reluctant to be interviewed and filmed, and we had a very hard time convincing her of letting us be around. So that's obviously fascinating for a TV reporter.
And convince her you did. Let's take a look now at the report by Laurence Cuvillier and Mathieu Comin.
Concrete as far as the eye can see, home to 22 million residents. That's twice Belgium's entire population. Welcome to Mexico City. First stop, the mayor's offices. It's 6 a.m. and already some 50 people are queuing up to meet her and share their troubles.
Madam, could you please help me ensure that these 3 years of work, almost 4, are taken into account?
Tax issues, neighbourhood disputes, art projects. 4 times a week while the city's fast asleep, Claudia Sheinbaum and her assessors open their doors and ears to constituents' concerns. The first woman to hold the city's top job hails from the Socialist Party. A mother of 2, she's the one who initiated this early morning surgery.
These sessions are extremely important because they keep me grounded and in touch with citizens' real issues. I think that the key to good governance is knowing how to listen.
Outside the town hall, dawn is breaking on the Zocalo, the central square. It's just gone 7 a.m. The daily meeting with her security cabinet can now begin. 2018 was the nation's bloodiest year to date, with an average of almost 100 homicides a day.
We're now totaling 254 serious offences.
It's a key challenge for the city administration that took power at the end of 2018. Drug cartels are currently fighting over who'll rule the city's historic centre, an area that's teeming with activity, including informal trade. Today, Claudia Sheinbaum has come to inaugurate a street art gallery in the city centre.
Security is also about taking back ownership of the streets. We can do it together.
It's shopkeeper José Luis who presented this project to the mayor. He's held on to the ticket he was given that day.
One day I thought, you know what, I'm going to meet Madame Sheinbaum, just to see what happens. I handed her our group's projects. I'd never met her before.
Building back trust, a tall order in a country where officials are often seen as fundamentally corrupt.
What do we expect from you? To be our eyes on the ground, to tell us what you see. We also know that we have crooked colleagues who work with the gangs. We have to admit that.
Police officers and residents now meet every week, and it's often a rowdy affair.
The thief entered our courtyard. The cop said, "So where is he?" I said, "Go ahead, you have my blessing to search the entire place, even if it's in the trash. One way or another, you have to catch him." So the cop gets him, and the thief tells him where he's hidden the loot, about 2,000 pesos, and then the cop let him go. So tell me, who can we turn to?
Shopkeepers are the first victims, racketeered by criminals who threaten their lives if they don't pay up. A few days after that meeting, just 2 streets away, a shopkeeper was shot dead in the middle of the day. For Franco and José, it's the same routine every morning. A bulletproof vest and a fully loaded firearm. Nationwide, some 228 police officers were killed over the first 6 months of the year.
It's a tough decision, and I took it alone. My family was dead against it. They could see what was going on in the country, and it scared them. All those officers dead on the job.
In the busy maze of Mexico's city center, patrols can easily get ambushed. As a result, the officers often prefer to leave their vehicles and patrol on foot. But at a street corner, a shopkeeper calls the agents out.
You're not brave enough to come and see what's happening here.
And you're not brave enough to take care of your own delinquents.
But that's your job. That's what you're paid for.
You're certainly not paying me.
Of course I do. That's why I pay my taxes.
Yeah, right. You look like a good taxpayer.
The reason my husband is angry is that our son was kidnapped and killed 2 years ago.
Carlota and Jose only discovered the tragic news in the newspaper, just 24 hours after their son was taken.
Ever since my son's kidnapping, the police haven't lifted a finger. The first officer came and demanded 2,000 euros to start the investigation. Then he was transferred, and a new officer came saying, "I'll solve the case." And then he asked for 4,000 euros.
Eventually, both men calmed down.
If you're interested, we now hold meetings with local residents every Wednesday. You can ask your neighbor. She comes regularly.
The clash is over. Jose and Franco are used to facing bitterness and mistrust. And yet the case offered up a number of leads, not least the abductors' voices. It's the victim's sister, Denise, who handled their calls.
I was petrified. There was a policeman next to me, telling me what to say, because I had no idea. I was completely lost.
Corruption and crime leave no corner of the city untainted. But there's another evil that also permeates its walls: pollution. Letty lives far, far away from the city centre. When she's finished her cleaning shift in this upscale neighbourhood, she faces a long trek home.
I have a 2-hour commute every morning. I spend 4 or 5 hours at work, and then I have 2 more hours to get home again.
Letty's neighbourhood isn't easily accessible. It's one of the many areas that sprung up over the last decades without any planning or infrastructure.
When we moved here in 1984, we were surrounded by green hills. Of course, we didn't have electricity or running water, but it was a better life, wasn't it, Letty? And as you can see, now there are houses all the way up the hills. There used to be squirrels, rabbits, armadillos. Now there aren't even any birds.
From their rooftop, Letty and her mother have a perfect vantage point onto the thick layer of smog that covers the entire valley. In the 80s and 90s, Mexico became infamous for being the world's most polluted city. That's until authorities decided to tackle the issue with some success. At the Atmospheric Monitoring Centre, ozone particle levels are controlled on a daily basis to assess whether the most polluting vehicles should be banned from taking to the roads.
So you're telling me we're going to be above the limit?
Yes, that's right.
But not high enough to declare a ban?
The centre's director had witnessed almost constant progress since the 90s. But in May this year, Mexico faced its old demons once again as the city choked under fine particle pollution.
I've been working on air quality since 1992. And I'd never seen anything like what we've seen this year. What happened is the result of massive wildfires in the west of the country, and then the air stagnated here, in the city basin.
Exceptionally high temperatures and a rain season that started far later than usual. A dangerous combination that's the direct result of global warming. And the climate crisis took Mayor Sheinbaum by surprise. It took 3 days before she declared the temporary closure of the area's schools. a delay that drew sarcastic remarks from some constituents because Madam Mayor is expected to know her stuff. This physicist and environmental engineer is part of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007.
Vivo en la Ciudad de México de toda mi vida y parte de mi...
I've lived my entire life in Mexico, and it was even the subject of some of my science studies. Air quality, soil conservation. So being in power gives me an opportunity to put into practice everything I'd planned.
But air quality isn't an easy battle to win, even if it is a specialist at the forefront of the fight. Mexico struggles to keep up with its growing population. Over several generations, the city faced rapid demographic growth. Letty's mother had 11 brothers and sisters, Letty has 7, and she herself has 3 daughters. The first consequence for such a full house: water shortages.
I reuse the water from my washing machine to clean the floors.
And it's not unusual for Letty and her mother to go to the city authorities to ask for more.
Could you please send us a full truck of water? There are 7 of us in the house, and the amount you send isn't enough.
It's often a fruitless chore.
OK, you'll be amongst the last of the day. It may take some time, but don't worry, OK? The water will arrive eventually.
Sometimes we have to go every day because they'll deliver just a little bit of water. 2 days ago I went to ask for water, but they never came.
This time around, Letty and her mother are determined to get their due. They climb into the truck to guide the driver, a DIY approach that 38% of Mexico's residents depend on. It's hard to believe that when the Spanish arrived in what was then Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital was in fact a lake dotted with a few islands. Centuries of draining and overusing the groundwater table have turned Mexico into a dried-up city. The subsoil has become brittle, which makes the effects of the region's regular earthquakes all the more devastating. 10,000 people died in 1985, 331 in 2017. With a new week starts a new set of meetings, and perhaps a glimmer of hope for Carlota. She's come with her daughter Denise. Sick and depressed, José Luis has stayed home.
We found his car. We found his body. But there's been no arrest. I'm asking for your help, please. Justice must be done.
I tell you what, let's get you an appointment with the new magistrate who specializes in abduction cases.
In a country where 98% of crimes go unpunished, reopening an abduction case is something of a leap of faith. But it's better than nothing for Carlota.
I just want justice, and for all of us to be treated the same way. Whether or not we have money, that we all be allowed our day in court.
Across the Mexican capital, Claudia Sheinbaum lights up these tiny glimmers of hope. The task at hand is a massive one to tackle in just one 6-year mandate. But with increasingly aware, demanding and proactive residents, the former Aztec capital will perhaps one day be a little greener, a little cleaner, and a whole lot more fair.
Well, our reporter Lawrence Cavilier is still with us. Lawrence, thank you so much for that fascinating report and insight into Mexico City and its new mayor. And clearly for Claudia Sheinbaum, this change can't come soon enough. Is it possible, given the scale of the work ahead?
Well, first I suggest that we hear her take on this issue. Claudia Sheinbaum has been living in Mexico City since she was born 57 years ago. At that time, Mexico City was only 6 million people. Now it's 22 million. So let's hear how she has seen the city change.
La ciudad perdió mucha vida comunitaria, no en todos lados, pero en general.
Mexico lost a lot of its community life. Not everywhere, but almost. When I was a child, we would play in the streets. Now, it's no longer possible. for security reasons, and also because the cars have taken over our public spaces. So to go back, well, not really to go back, because we don't want to return to the past, but to build a city in which the public spaces, the sense of community and daily interactions between people are substantial elements of urban life. That's a dream that I really want to achieve.
Un sueño que es fundamental para cumplir en la ciudad.
Now, Mexico City is under external threats like climate change. For example, this year we've been through 3 weeks of drought in the middle of the rain season. So this will make the water shortages even more dramatic this year. And with all the goodwill in the world, this will not be tackled within a 6-year term.
Lawrence, the mayor seems like a really convincing and serious person, and that's something Mexico City clearly needs. The threat of drug violence is clearly headline news regarding Mexico, the whole country. I can't help but wonder whether she fears for her life, given the kind of changes she's trying to make.
Well, she certainly does not act as if she was under threat. For example, every Saturday she takes part in tree planting events in different parts of the city where she literally does gardening with the people without any kind of visible security. Now, we have to understand that Mexico City in itself is not a crossroads for drug trafficking. The city is too densely populated to move huge loads of drugs. But the real threat for the population are kidnappings, as we have seen in the report, and extortion. The majority of shop owners and business owners are under the threat of extortion by drug cartels, and that's the most visible threat for and the most visible security issue for the population just now.
And clearly, the mayor has a real job on her hands to sort out these many issues regarding Mexico City. Lawrence Gavilli, thank you so much for your insight. Thank you so much for your report. And just to remind you, you can see it again via our website, www.france24.com. This is Reporters on France 24. Do stay with us.